The gremlins are in the machines tonight. For folks that know, usually we're very prompt. 10 o'clock Eastern on the dot, we're live. And today, initially, I had problems. My computer, my camera rebooted right before 10 o'clock. So, it took an extra minute or two to get that rebooted. Then Hodey's voice changer things going on. Somebody's put the whammy on us, Hodey.
Oh, we got a bit of the hex, and I believe as true libertarians, I'm supposed to automatically suspect Fed involvement, right? We're talking about Israel, so already the conspiracy theories are going to go flying.
Yeah.
How did they mess with our tech? Nvidia's owned by somebody who has a partial share in a Qatari Air Force base somewhere.
Right.
All that stuff, It's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect, and like you said, it's perfect for libertarians. Anyway, yes, thank you everyone for putting up with this. Certainly, if you're watching us right here on the sort of new free-for-all, we're rebranded. We go under the Distant Warrior banner right now. So feel free to follow us at Distant Warrior on X. Follow us on the YouTube channel. Also on Facebook. Go to facebook.com / Distant Warrior, all one word. So yeah, we got the branding right, Hodey. All one word, Distant Warrior. It's the new company banner that we're under. Happy to have folks find us here and join us here. Really appreciate everyone who's following us along. Really appreciate you guys. And speaking of friends of the show, Free from Are You Smarter Than a Politician? Our favorite game show, just about anywhere, Hodey. He says we need a squeaky Hodey doll in merch. Yeah, maybe that's a good. Like, who are those kids? Not the Gremlins. Was it the Chipmunks? Was that it, Hodey? That had the high squeaky voices?
Oh yeah, the Chipmunks, of course. Yeah, this is I could go for that. There's certainly an element of.
We'll get you one of those that has like the college sweater with a big H on it for Hodester.
Perfect. Yeah. As opposed to the big A, and then when something goes wrong, you just be like, Hodey, pull the Dave out there. Yeah.
Oh, and as if to give us a shout out, Free went over to YouTube and subscribed on YouTube. Everybody be like Free. Be a free thinker. I don't know. Too many frees in there, Hodey. But we thank Free for also subscribing on YouTube there. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah,
like
and listen,
be a free thinker. Do what he does.
Do what he does.
Perfect.
Yes. Oh, it's going to be one of those nights, I can tell. All right, everyone. Like we mentioned, follow us on X, YouTube, or Facebook for right now. We're looking at other platforms to expand to here shortly. Feel free to reach out to us on any of the chats on those platforms. We'd love to hear from you as the show progresses. You know the rule. No four-letter words. Four-letter words, we'll still read your comments, but we won't put you on the screen. Them's the rules in this voluntarily agreed to broadcast over the interwebs, Hodey. All right. Let's get on to the topic of this week. And Hodey, the first thing I want to talk about is literally probably that should be the most important thing we talk about right now, which is potentially peace in the Middle East. Now, from someone who has admittedly full-blown TDS as well as actual grievances against President Trump, this is not always the easiest thing in the world. Mike and I did our version of this on Liberty Lens, and before the cameras turned on, he said to me, he goes, "Now, like John, you gotta be reasonable. You gotta give credit where credit is due if you see any." And he's right. At least you got to give credit where credit is due, even if it comes from someone that you find distasteful, to say the least. So, Hodey, President Trump has been stumping when it comes to his record, potentially his legacy as a diplomat. He's been stumping that he's the peace president, that he's resolved more wars than anybody in history. Certainly, he was begging for that Nobel Peace Prize. He really thought he deserved it. And we've had previous episodes, Hody, where we've talked about this. The president likes to think he solved a lot of wars, whereas he really didn't. There were literally very fragile ceasefires, lasted for a few minutes, and then disappeared. Some of the participants even went so far as saying, "Hey, we didn't even want this guy involved, and he really wasn't involved." I'm thinking particularly about India and Pakistan, and so his actual role and the actual whether or not there's actually been peace settlements, like many things with President Trump in the past, is up for debate, and it seems to be subject to his over exaggeration of his own accomplishments, right? But in this particular case, in the Middle East, he's always said, "Look, I've got a 20-point peace plan. We're gonna put our foot down." And clearly he was coming down on the pro-Israel side, which has its we could talk about that as well. But Hody, his peace plan when really kicked off for reals, as they say, on October 13th, this past Monday, right? So you had a meeting in Egypt that was co-sponsored by President Trump and President El-Sisi of Egypt. Had a lot of foreign leaders there, many representatives from the Middle East. Interestingly enough, not including Benjamin Netanyahu, and we could also talk about that. Where parameters of a peace deal were laid forth. Phase one, as they say, initial ceasefire, and I'm just doing the bullet points. Hody, initial ceasefire, hostages, both ends repatriated back to their home countries. Living hostages that were still on the Gaza side being held by Hamas, being sent back to Israel. Israeli detainees being sent back to Gaza. Now, it also included repatriation of remains of those who were killed on both sides of this deal. And phase two, we're sort of in the middle of right now. Also in phase one, before I forget, also increased aid, humanitarian aid was allowed to go through to the people who really needed it in Gaza. We're talking about 600, they're estimating 600 trucks of supplies and humanitarian aid being allowed through. And if you listen to the UN or other NGOs, they're saying, look, it's better than before, but still far short of what's needed. But it's a start. Supplies are starting to trickle in, aid is starting to trickle in. Hody, give me your thoughts. There's a lot to talk about here. I don't want to throw out too much all at once. So let's start off on what I just said. What do you think of the summit and the initial kickoff of phase one of Trump's 20-point peace plan?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Like you said, I am like you. I am reflexively against Donald Trump at this point, which generally tends to put you in the right direction as far as being a human being. But there is this is absolutely, at the very least, it's a good thing. If it all falls apart, at least for a few days, there's not killing people, right? Which we will, at this point, we will take. There's a lot to dig into. Obviously, Trump can't mess up his moment without throwing in a few lies, like calling it a peace plan, which it is functionally not. This is a ceasefire. This is not a peace plan. And so there's things like that where it's like, if I want to quibble, I can quibble, but just to focus unadulterated, good part for a minute. These people have been hostages on Israel, in Israel and Palestine. We've had hostages years at this point, going back to even before this conflict. We've had people wondering if their loved ones are dead or not, and those questions will be answered if both sides, of course, agree to actually release all the remains and prisoners. And so this is a pretty big deal. When people have been releasing prisoners up to this point, and I'm sorry to make it graphic on the show, but I mean, in some cases, sexually assaulting the prisoners as an insult to get them pregnant, and then and then returning them pregnant with like the blood of the other side or whatever. Just
Right.
horrific levels of war crimes that we're talking about, I believe. And that's on the Palestine side. On Israel's side, they've returned some of the bodies still with the nooses around their necks, you know, and obvious evidences of torture. And while all that is like, it makes you see how bad those sides are, but the fact that at least this nightmare will be over for thousands of people is critically important. It's so, just on a human level, we need to at least recognize that these people not being hostages, not being tortured, not being sexually assaulted, you know, everything that both sides have been doing to their prisoners, taking that away has been it will be a very good thing.
Right. I don't know which one of us dropped off, Hodey. You froze up to me. Did I freeze up to you?
No, I heard you for a brief second, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I was yeah, it's Gremlins, like we said earlier.
Yeah.
But like, I think if I can sort of recap where you were going, yeah, there's plenty of atrocities on both sides. There's plenty of inhumanity towards your fellow humans on both sides. But to the extent that even if it's extremely fleeting, at least for this moment, you could see those families, the joy in their hearts when they saw their family, their loved ones returned, the ones that were still alive, and a sense of closure for those families that got back the remains of their lost loved ones to give them some sort of closure. And even on the Gazan side, just the fact that, hey, maybe we'll get some help to these people. Maybe these people can finally get fed. Maybe we can get them some medical attention without having to dodge bullets and bombs. Hodey, how likely do you think it is that this initial wave of stressful goodwill, if I could phrase it that way, how much do you think that might lead to something more? Like, or is it just, are we beyond that? Is that area of the region just, that region of the world rather, just doomed to be in constant conflict? I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that particular part of the world has been in constant conflict for like thousands of years. I mean, people use that as hyperbole a lot, but in this case, it's actually true, right?
Yeah, like, yeah, obviously Israel is a nation since I mean, they moved out Palestinian people to create room for that nation. There was animosity immediately.
Of course.
Right. I mean, Israelis talk about how there was still food on the tables in the houses that they moved into. Right. Like, this is you know, and so obviously you didn't start in a position of any kind of legal authority or charity. And so naturally there's going to be tensions there. So since Israel's existence in this modern era, it has been just war. So if not abject war, then terrorism, violence, anger with each other's neighbors, you know, everything like that. Now, as far as likelihood goes, this is the fourth ceasefire that we've reached since May 2023. So that's basically every 6 months, we're averaging a ceasefire. If we extend that out to 10, 12 years, we're averaging about 6 ceasefires per decade-ish. So this is not, ceasefires are not something new. And I want to focus on the good just because we almost seem to become desensitized to the fact that this isn't going to last long. And I think most common sense will tell you that this is not going to last long. Israel and Hamas have both pointed out that parts of the peace plan are completely non-negotiable and things that they won't do. And so that is, as you mentioned, why Netanyahu wasn't there. Obviously, he is portrayed himself as somebody who doesn't compromise with, you know, Hamas. So he is not going to, you know, be somebody who even wants to give the appearance of saying, oh, we took their concerns seriously or anything like that. Like, he's positioning himself as the strong man. So he sends negotiators on his behalf, not that they didn't have his approval to do so, but, you know, optics are optics. And so if it's to go further, you're going to suddenly need a Netanyahu that says, oh no, I can work with Hamas. We can figure out something. And that's already something that he doesn't even want to have the appearance of. So I would say that this is pretty close to like a 0% chance that this works out, but I don't want to be negative. I would rather, you know what? I am fine to let's let the plan be what it is. And if I'm wrong this time and there's something different about this plan, even though they say it's non-negotiable than all the other plans, I want to be wrong. And so I will say what I can reasonably, but I'm certainly not going to push against anybody's hope that it actually is successful. As somebody who studied world religions, that was my degree, theology, general studies in college, that these are two faiths who have been, I guess obviously they're nations, not faiths, but people that seem to represent faiths that have been in conflict since like the days of Ishmael, right? Like it's a long time. And this is something that they will occasionally, both of them will occasionally find peace, and then political actors will come and ruin it. And so I desperately want them to find themselves, their culture, and their nations to a place where peace becomes the ruling, it becomes the ideal, right? It becomes the goal of the day. The Talmud says that all of the Torah is dedicated to the act of shalom, or peace, right? This is again iterated when you read Muhammad's Quran, that peace is how we fight against our enemies, even when they strike against us. And it's easy to find all the times where there are violence, of course, and even in these religious books, obviously there's a great deal of violence and genocide and terrible histories. But both sides have spent the bulk of their histories recognizing those atrocities for what they were. Isaiah and Jeremiah condemn those genocides and say this is part of why Israel's in such a difficult situation. Muhammad himself was a practicer of pacifism. And so while both religions obviously have been corrupted occasionally to go overboard, I don't want to say the religion's been corrupted. Both of them have been abused. People abuse the tenets of those faiths to try and make it do something bad. I am desperate to see them resolved, because I think the more we do look at these religious and spiritual influences, the more that we really should have peace with our fellow man. And so it's a culture versus politics situation, which is why we as libertarians probably have a special interest in this, because we obviously favor a healthy culture over the governance of politics. And this is a very obvious way in which we see religion being corrupted to allow them to do some of the most heinous things, heinous war crimes in world history.
You're right, of course. And what's interesting to me, though, is when you look at the plan and taking the context of everything you just mentioned, the history, the nature of, so to speak, of the, let's forget about countries at this point, the tribes in the area. Mm-hmm. That from an American perspective now, Hodey, I want to talk a little bit about, because part of this plan is what they say is an ISF, an International Stabilization Force, right? Which means someone has to play cop in that area. Like they're acknowledging there has to be a cop in that area. To the extent that, since this is being led by President Trump, here's a flashing red light for me as a libertarian, which is the U.S. putting itself in the role of world policeman again? Because we've already seen that President Trump is willing to act militarily on the behalf of Israel. We remember the Iran bombings, right? And we remember the actual glee on the part of the president, Secretary McDrinky Drunk, Pete Hegseth, and the rest of the cabinet, right? This was a, hey, we get to use our bombers type of moment for them, right? What is this ISF going to look like? You hear reports, today, as a matter of fact, there was some report saying that Australia is considering being part of that ISF. And to the extent that you're going to have some at least initial transition force there to make sure the ceasefire is enforced and all that, and the conditions of any agreed to treaty are there. The more international and the less it's the U.S., the better, for a lot of different reasons. One is it keeps us out of it, obviously. But then the second one is it becomes less and less that it's Israel. The great Satan is still tipping the scales on the part of its partner, Israel, right? On its favored son, Israel. So Do you think, though, from the U.S. perspective, this plan will hinge entirely on us putting either boots on the ground or being the cop with the nightstick in the area, patrolling up and down, like those big old Irish cops where I grew up in the Bronx, swinging the nightstick and just walking up and down, right? Administering their own justice, right? Making sure that people aren't mugging each other or whatever. Is that going to be the U.S. role? And honestly, it seems like it might be one that the president is willing to embrace, at least in this situation. For as much as he wants to give lip service to getting out of other wars, like the Russian-Ukraine war, does it seem to you that he's willing to embrace the role of policeman for the purposes of this particular peace plan?
Yeah, that's hardly up for debate. The peace plan is 1 page long. I encourage everybody to read it as usual. It is not over anybody's head, and it is quite transparent that the names Donald Trump as well as the United States is all over this thing. When we look at point 9, for example, that there's going to be a transitional governance within Gaza for the Palestinian people. And who's the head of that? It's headed and chaired by President Donald J. Trump, with other members of the heads of state to be announced, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. I mean, that's just written into it. So he's going to assume temporary control of their government if this is agreed upon. It also says not just the United States, but a Trump economic development plan that Gaza will have to adhere to. And then we look further down and we see, like in points 18 and 19, that the United States is going to be in charge of ensuring the reconstruction, development, and security obligations are fulfilled. So yes, we are the ones that are going to have to be saying, we have put ourselves in the obligation of saying, yes, if something goes wrong, it's going to be our troops, it's going to be our people, we're responsible for the defense. And if there's going to be any hope for resolution, this peace plan would require that peace plan to go through the United States, according to point 19. So within these points, and there's more that, than I've even mentioned, but within the 20 points, it's really obvious that the United States is front and center of this. This is ultimately something that will give Trump a great deal of power, a whole second country for him to rule over, because he's doing such a bang up job with this one, might as well add a second one. And so that is going to fall to his responsibility. And the United States is something that, according to this peace plan, the two sides will actually have to negotiate through, disallowing them to agree to anything themselves. That's, of course, if this plan is approved. And I would be shocked if it is. And even if it is, I would be shocked if that peace lasted for more than a couple of years.
And that might be optimistic, honestly, on your part.
My honest to goodness guess is there's no way that all these 20 points get accepted. I would put that percent chance at probably 1%. Trump pushing for a Nobel Prize right now is a little embarrassing because, like I said, we've had plenty of ceasefires in these last couple of years. Biden declared 2. Unlike Biden's first one, Trump's first ceasefire agreement, Biden's at least lasted more than 24 hours long. And so this one, obviously, we've had about a week here. Now it's the ceasefire agreement, as far as we can tell, has been acknowledged. And like I said, I don't want to dump on that. But as far as the actual peace plan goes, plenty of presidents have organized something that Donald Trump has organized here. It's that peace plan where things are going to get difficult. And unfortunately, we're dealing with two sides that are more often inclined to commit violent acts when there's a peace deal on the table, adding kind of a dangerous wrinkle to the situation we're in right now. So we have to kind of hope that they either come to some kind of arrangement on their own without the United States, or that there is some kind of genuine change of heart for both sides. Both sides certainly don't want to look like they've had a change of heart, but hopefully that's just appearances.
Yeah, because I think we can't underestimate the political context for both Hamas and Netanyahu, right?
Yep.
Hamas, obviously, as a political organization, relies on, let's face it, terror to keep its populace in line. While Netanyahu, to a large extent, relies on the same. I mean, he is a wartime leader. There's no other way to describe, and that's the kind of way of describing it. He is a wartime leader, and if I could use a football analogy, back in the days when and this will show you how old I am, Hody. When the AFL and the NFL were at war with each other, trying to see who would be right. They always said Pete Rozelle was a peacetime commissioner. Al Davis was the wartime commissioner, for the AFL, right? He couldn't run a league on his own, as later on we found out, right? If he was the commissioner, the NFL would have crumbled. But for a league fighting for relevancy and fighting for its piece of the pie, he was that wartime commissioner. Same here. Netanyahu, I don't know if he could rule in peace. I don't know if he knows how to be a politician if things were swimming. He is swimmingly well, rather. He is a guy who just he needs the boogeyman, much like Trump needs a boogeyman here in the U.S. Netanyahu needs the boogeyman of the terrorists at our gate, the barbarians at the gate. He needs that because both he and his right-wing buddies in Israel need that. They need the enemy in order to be politically relevant. The fact that he wasn't at this summit, two things. One, he was invited, despite what you might read. He was invited by Trump. The president of Turkey, Erdogan, said, if you invite Netanyahu, I'm not coming, and a lot of these other participants will not show up. Netanyahu made some excuse like, oh, there's some sort of holiday going on, I'm not going to be able to make, whatever excuse he gave. But to your point, he just was not willing to be seen there at this point. This kind of puts me in mind when Trump claimed he was going to solve the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours, and he got a summit, again, somewhere in the Middle East. I forget where it was, but and it was him, Putin, but no Zelensky. Now, how you negotiate a peace deal between two warring sides, and you do it without one of those participants at the peace table, is beyond me. I just don't see how you do it. And when Trump says, well, Zelensky's irrelevant, let's face it, he's irrelevant. His country's irrelevant when compared to Russia. Over here, why was there no Netanyahu at this thing? I don't understand how you get a lasting peace deal unless, at least publicly, the appearance is that both sides are in on this deal. Because to your point, otherwise it's not going to last. It's likely not going to hold anyway. But again, putting positive vibes towards it, you're off to a horrible start if you can't get both participants in the room, Hodey.
Yeah, it's not something. My guess is that Netanyahu, of course, approved this temporary ceasefire deal, commissioned his people to approve it, but didn't want to be associated with an approval of a ceasefire because that's not what he's known for.
Right.
I watched this video a couple weeks ago, and it was people being like, oh, it was Israelis, and they're like, oh, that Netanyahu, he's a murderer, he's a thief, he's backstabbing, conniving, warmonger, a-hole, just terrible things. Right. And then at the very end, it revealed that these were Netanyahu's supporters, right? These were guys who wanted that guy. And let's face it, we like to poke fun at them, but that's what Donald Trump is to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Everybody knows he's a liar. Nobody's going over here and being like, oh, Donald Trump's super honest with it. Let's be real here. That's a joke. Everybody that can support him even remotely kind of does so in the idea that he's a blunt instrument of vengeance against the left, and he's imperfect and terrible in all his terrible ways, and he's full of himself and conceited and a liar and a pedophile and a murderer and maybe all these other, and maybe he helps in a genocide, but he owns the left, and that's kind of the most important thing, and they want somebody terrible for that. And so we kind of, as Americans, we have no high horse here, right? We have to kind of be like, well, yeah, there are plenty of Americans who will tell you all this about Donald Trump and know what he is and vote for him anyway. And this is Netanyahu's strength. He's not, like you mentioned, he is not there for peace. Israel and Hamas, I mentioned this already, but if you go into the history of attempted peace plans, anytime there's it's almost there, Israel or Hamas will sabotage those plans. They have been clockwork about it. There's going to be a terrorist event. There's going to be some kind of attack. And there's always fighting, right? Like even now, unfortunately, people are still dying, you know, at those border tensions. And so, but it's none of it's like approved, right? Like it's just unapproved, whatever. And so all it takes to derail this is take all that violence along these blurred borders, right? Along these lines, and then say, oh, well, they're not going to honor it, so no peace anymore. And Hamas and Netanyahu are political entities. They do not survive without each other. Hamas, absolutely, you can go through Palestinians. Now, Hamas will actually have protests against their leadership, Palestinians will protest against Hamas. And so there will be at least some backlash publicly there. But Hamas people still see that as just, we need somebody who will not let us be blown into oblivion. And Hamas is definitely putting in the legwork to saying we'll do whatever it takes to not have us get blown into oblivion. I hate the fact that to them that means perpetual war, because to them that means perpetual power. There's real libertarian talking points to get out of this one. But yeah, like Netanyahu not being at the table, it just goes to show he doesn't even want to be associated with the appearance of peace. So any hope that you have that there's going to be some kind of lasting peace deal when one of the sides literally doesn't even want to be in the same room as another organization where peace is being discussed. This is a war to him that he is going to win, is not going to accept a conditional surrender. And if he accepts it, he's going to accept it under terms that he knows are going to be broken. You know, one citizen commits a murder against his person, and he'll just be able to scrap the entire thing. Like this is not,
and to be a little fair, like I mentioned earlier, it's just not that Netanyahu doesn't want to be viewed in the same room with Hamas. Like a lot of other Arab leaders, like we mentioned Erdogan, right? He's like, if Netanyahu's in the room, I'm not going to be there. It's like that's all there is to it, right? So and you can understand some of that. All right. By the way, for those in the chats, if you have any questions or comments on what we're saying, give us your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen in the Middle East here with this peace plan? Let us know. Do you support President Trump? Do you think he's just doing it for his Nobel Prize? Because that seems to be something he really wants. Let us know your feelings in the chat. Hodey, one of the things that this reminds me of a little bit is because, and one of the things that's startling by its omission is any concrete plan for a solution to this. Meaning, is the end goal of this 20-point peace plan a 2-state solution, 1-state solution, something in between, something that doesn't go by either one of those terms? Because otherwise, are we looking at, again, sort of like what happened with the British mandate for Palestine, which was as long as the military power of the day, Britain, was there keeping the peace, much like it was peaceful when the Romans were there, right? If we go back far enough, as long as there's somebody there tossing around military might, people keep a lid on it. But one of the things that killed the British mandate for Palestine was they had no idea what to do with Israel as a solution, right? Like, in terms of a nation, right? This was obviously prior to when Israel got statehood, right? And the plan itself really was just never went so far as to say, how will the Jewish people live as a nation in that area? Are we doing the same thing now? Like we're saying, okay, here's a plan for ceasefire. Here's a plan for an ISF, the Stabilization Force. Here's a plan to get more aid to people in Gaza. Here's a plan for Trump to line his pockets with economic development personally, and his family personally enrich themselves. Crony capitalism at its finest happening there for the development of Gaza, right? All that, well and good, fair enough. Okay, you got to get something out of this if you're going to play a role in it. Fair enough. But I don't see any of them saying, and by the way, are the Palestinians going to have self-determination? Are they going to have their own nation in that area? Are we going to have definable borders with diplomatic recognition of some sort of Palestinian nation in the area? What will be Israel's relationship to said unit? Like we had that is not even being broached, Hodey, and that's another one. I think we're setting ourselves up for anything, like any plan that's been put forward I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything you said, and I guess all I can do is substantiate what you're saying with facts, like what's in the plan, right? Like, I'm sorry, but any government that would agree to temporarily be led by another nation's government that is in bed with their enemies, that's a non-starter. That's not going to happen. It will never happen. I don't even know like where to start with it because it's so ridiculous on its face. And of course, Hamas has been like, yeah, that's never going to happen. Right. And of course they're correct. They are not going to voluntarily give Trump complete and total control over their country for any kind of, especially this determination period, which at the moment is undefined, right? Like it's just kind of there's a while until we get the peace settled down. You're just going to be led by Donald Trump and company just for a temporary thing, and then he'll totally give it back to you pending a lot of conditions. Like that's never going to happen. That's ridiculous. Similarly to Israel, asking them to retreat back to their originally established boundaries. They've, according to the ceasefire deal, they've withdrawn a little bit, but the whole point of this was occupation. Like they are occupying a different nation, and they are not going to give up on that. They believe the territory is theirs. This comes down to, this is where I can kind of put my degree into use, and I don't want to bore anybody who's not, religious, but this comes up at least in at a fundamentally political level, that when you look at something like Dome of the Rock, which is built upon the remains of the Temple of Solomon, and both sides consider that holy ground not to be given up or bartered with or whatever in any condition, right? And so how do these two sides, what is the two-state solution for that? Are they going to do like a Brady Bunch thing where they put like tape down the middle of the Dome of the Rock and just be like, this half is yours and this half is ours, right? Like it's a silly thing. And so there really is kind of this is an attempt at a two-state solution. It's important to recognize that, at least as far as the discussion goes, because there will still be some kind of, according to the peace plan, there will still be some kind of legally recognized entity known as Palestine, and there will be a legal entity known as Israel, and how they interact will be determined by the nature of this deal and whatever the two sides can come to grips with and whatever they agree to. And so, like, it's just like, and I am completely for a two-state solution. I do believe that people discern their own governance. The problem is when, I mean, I have a tough time when people are like, which one's worse, because both are kind of actively engaged in a genocide. And it's like, when the two sides are committing genocides, then a two-state solution is like, well, if they're both committing genocides, then these two states are incompatible with each other. And that's absolutely true, right? Like, unless they change, unless they say, you know what, we're not gonna do this anymore. But at the same time, like, these are completely different. Like, these are different people with different priorities. Hamas is explicitly genocidal. Israel's only implicitly genocidal. And so what they're doing is making it impossible for basically anybody to get along with them. Right. The views on Hamas and the IDF, there was this poll I saw that was across like the world, and America is the only country in which like Israel enjoys above like a 30%, Israel or Hamas enjoy like above a 30% support rate. And every other country views these entities as so negative, which is probably why it comes to us to negotiate. Because everybody else is just like, you guys are genocidal maniacs. I don't want to sit here and work out a treaty. Like, I'm not going to work out a treaty with you guys over here who are blowing up food trucks and need to sign an organization like a value to say, don't do that. Who are ordering like soldiers to shoot children in the head as they try to recover the bodies of their parents. Or it's either them or the side of these of a side that is like, we throw gay people off of tall buildings still. Like, it's absurd, right? Like, they're both in such a terrible cultural societal place that I don't know. Nobody sees a solution to this that would in any way be considered reasonable while working with these two sides and meeting their demands. I don't know what the reason would be. Hamas isn't going to compromise on Dome of the Rock. Israel's not going to compromise on the Temple of Solomon. And I think that's why it just feels so hopeless. And I don't mean to create a feeling of hopelessness, but as libertarians, I think we can all recognize that the problem is government. Yeah. And as long as these two sides have that incentive to keep their own side in power, they will keep manufacturing atrocities, something we Americans are familiar with our own government doing as well. And hey, you need us to be these bad guys, to be these bad people. And as long as that tactic continues to work, I want to say that there's a solution, but I don't know what it would be. And I don't think anybody else does either. It's why they kind of laughed it's why they've laughed this peace deal out of the room. They're willing to talk about like the ceasefire. And I guess the Trump administration has decided to call that the first step in this 20-point peace plan. Phase one, which is 0 points of the 20-point peace plan, which is, like I said, it's just, I don't see it happening. If it does, I'll be pretty happy. I still won't like President Trump taking over another country's government, but I will take that over these people endlessly blowing each other up. It's just, it's like arguing about a video game, which fantasy situation is cooler.
Yeah.
I will take that fantasy situation, but I'm very acutely aware it's a fantasy situation that isn't going to happen.
And what's interesting, Hodey, is you see a lot of parallels to what Trump tried to do in the Russian-Ukraine war, right? Which is bully his way in there, try to cut a financial deal for himself and the U.S., right, and his cronies, and then just turn to the side that he views as weaker and saying, too bad, this is what you have to accept. Like, so for Zelensky, it was like, you're not getting your land back. That's all there is to it. Like the Donbass and all that, gone. Don't. And the guy's like, why are you telling me to give up my country? It's like, would we tolerate as part of a peace deal? Like, okay, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama all belong to Cuba now, or whatever. As Americans, we would find that horribly distasteful, right? Why do we expect? And again, going back,
I get rid of Florida. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I hear you. Hey, I'm from New York, baby. Anything south of Queens is just, it might as well, you know what I mean? It's
might as well have that redneck accent.
Yeah, yeah, that's the South. I mean, right. It's like anything north of the Bronx is Canada, and anything west of Manhattan is California, right? There's no in between for us New Yorkers, right? But anyway, so I see that, and I see the resentment as a part of this. Like, even if this peace plan held for any period of time, the fact that you would have, let's face it, a largely American, if not American supplied force there, at least, like you said, an American controlled force there, the resentment is going to come right back to us again. And then we're going to start wondering why we have like acts of terrorism against us. And as Americans, we just never learn our lessons, right? Like, the one thing Trump and the America First magats, that, the one good thing they were on always was get us out of these entanglements, get us out of these foreign wars, get us out of this nonsense. Why are we still involved in this stuff? And it seems like Trump is willing to pull people out, right? He's like, okay, we don't want to be part of NATO. NATO has to pull its own weight. Fair enough. Their defense spending budgets, contributions rose, fair enough, good. But he seems more than willing to commit the U.S. to these entanglements if he feels there's a buck in it for him. You know what I mean? I mean,
the Panama Canal, right? Like, I mean, that's the definition of a financial war. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so it is like a little concerning in that sense that he just seems to be on this one track thing. And, Mike Tremont, when we were doing our Liberty Lens this week, by the way, check that out at Liberty Lens on our YouTube channel, and check out the past episodes there, if I could throw in a little plug. One of the things he pointed out is, as Americans, because my question was, hey, are we going to give President Trump credit if he manages to pull off, say, a peace agreement or a ceasefire agreement, a non-hostilities agreement for, say, a year? And they get all this investment in the area, both in Israel and Palestine, or the supposed Palestinian state, right? And just give them a chance. Give capitalism a chance to take hold in the area and show these people, if you just, even though you hate each other, if you cooperate economically at least and not blow each other up, look at your standard of living go up. Get that, sort of like what happened with the Iron Curtain in Russia, right? Get those Levi's jeans in there. Get that Coca-Cola and rock music in there just long enough to show them what they're missing, and then let nature take its course, right? And Mike brought up a very good point. He goes, the people in that region don't care about that. They're not interested in becoming economic powers. Their interests are, I guess, more biblical, more religious, more like, we want our generations to be here. We can't give up what was given to us by divinity and by divine sources, right? And we have the way we need to live according to our scriptures and our moral guidelines, and again, everybody in the region. So to that extent, it may not be an issue of, Hodey, can we show them that they can get a better standard of living if they just put down their guns and picked up like laptops and started stock markets, and progressed in that direction.
Yeah, I want to be careful with this because I don't want to generalize the people or collectivize the people in an entire region. I'm familiar with like a lot of the cultural stuff, and I mentioned,
right,
the Temple of Solomon. There are religious doctrines, but these are people who care about feeding their families. These are
sure.
These are people who care, like we all can be persuaded to vote against our own self-interest against like an enemy if we are so snookered that way. If somebody, creates this fictionalized or caricaturized version of somebody who hates us, how often we libertarians have heard, oh, they hate you for your freedoms, right? Before we kind of realized all that was just completely bogus. They hated us because we were blowing up innocent people. And so they were, it's not that they care, that they just like are willing to deal with living in caves. Feeding people and allowing them access to food and water and stuff is tremendously compelling to all human beings, including those there. Now they have other, I won't discount the religious and ideological elements to this, that there are certain things that they just will not sacrifice, will not say, oh, it's okay, that was just a little bit of why I cared about this conflict or something.
No, I didn't mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean to necessarily say collectivize the people into an ideology, but what I meant is, to the extent that as Americans, I think we can put ourselves in the position of, look, for the most part, we have it really good in this country, right? For the most part.
Oh, yeah.
And generally speaking, we're not worried about mass violence in our streets. We're not worried about whether we'll have enough to eat tomorrow, right? The poorest, our poverty line would put in a lot of that region would be in the top 10%, right? Of wealth and income, right? So I'm saying, taking that context, the typical American can understand that if you could put up with someone that you can't get along with, or that you might even characterize as hating, if you are shown a path to better economic living, to a higher standard of living, as Americans, we're like, okay, that should work for most Americans, right? Like, that'll work. Like, you'll put up with your worst enemy if he's making you wealthier. Do you understand what I mean? It's generally accepted as an American ethos, whereas I think in that part of the world, it's not. I think there's much more tied into individual place in this continuum, right? Whereas here in America, maybe because we are basically a nation of immigrants, I don't think we have that as much. So that someone who takes this almost uniquely American approach and tries to dump it in that region of the world probably isn't going to get the results that they would get here in the U.S. That's what I meant.
Yeah, like, I mean, this is the mistake we made with like Vietnam, right? You guys don't want communism. We know deep down you really don't want communism. It makes, it's going to make you all so hungry and poor. Well,
there's that great line from Full Metal Jacket on the battlefield. Did you ever see that movie?
I have, yeah.
The general who's yelling at everyone goes, why? And I'm going to use I'm quoting the movie. He says, why are we here in Vietnam, son? To win the war, sir, or whatever. He goes, we are here because inside every Vietnamese, there is an American trying to get out, right? Like, and I think that encapsulates what you just said, right? Like, as Americans, we think we know what's best for the rest of the world, and I don't know that approach is going to work there.
Yeah, and in some cases we're right? Like I won't quib. I've seen the results of even authoritarian communism versus authoritarian capitalism. There's no debate which one is better.
Correct.
Like I still recognize that authoritarianism is the enemy, but as far as like which one is more likely to stifle your ability to eat and live and think and everything.
Yes, agreed.
Like, yeah. And so like I totally recognize all that. I don't want to downplay that, because I think unfortunately the leadership kind of gets off on these people being hungry and in danger and in deep risk, right? Like, why are both sides? This is something I thought only Hamas did, but I just watched, a missile coming out from Israel right in the middle of like an industrial commercial district, right? Like innocent people all around, like getting fired off from there. And it's like, why would they do that? Why would these governments do that? Why would they put their own citizens at risk? We know that puts them at risk. Well, that's what gives them something. People don't want to die. They don't want to be hungry. They don't want to be poor. They just see that if the other guys take over, we will die.
Right.
And in many cases, the other side gives them plenty of ammunition to believe that kind of thing, that they will die if the other side manages to gain a foothold in power. So they look at these people and say, yeah, Hamas they're genocidal, they're terrorists, they're explicitly murderous bigots, they're terrible, right? Like, we know what they are, but they are the people who are willing to kill for us. And we need somebody willing to kill for us, because otherwise it is kill or be killed. And it's hard because we have to appeal to the humanity within them and say, listen, they're being misled by a government. This is not who the Jewish people are. This is not who the Palestinian people are. Look to your history. You have illustrious examples of you guys promoting peace and goodness and love and trade and prosperity. Right. Yeah. And you like this, the people leading you right now are betraying those things. But it's hard to keep that in mind when the other guys keep putting guns to your heads, and then they keep pulling triggers. And then we just have to say that's an anomaly based on this situation, as opposed to, for them, it's lived experience, right? Like no, these people will kill us. It's not just like some kind of point of view. We have seen how they behave, and they will kill us. And in some cases they may, because they've been so coerced. So there's a lot of undoing. I mean, the reason, to go back to the peace deal, the reason none of it's going to work is because the culture is just not there. And politics is downstream from culture. Right. And politicians know that and have been intentionally poisoning that culture so that they can have their politics. That's who they are. And so we need to focus on fixing that culture before attempting these political solutions. Like I said, none of which will succeed until people are loving their neighbors as themselves. There's not going to be a resolution on any of this politically. It's impossible. Like it's all theory, and you can theorize it, but look at the two sides you're dealing with. You're dealing with Netanyahu and Hamas. Right? Like, this is not, they could not be further apart. So attempting to square those circles is a fun geometric example, but there's a reason we call it squaring a circle.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work very well. You're absolutely right. Okay. I think we've talked enough about this. Let's see if we can wrap up before we do. Hey, be nice to this Southern Florida girl, says Terry. Look, Terry, I didn't mean to be, I didn't mean anything negative, but to this New York boy, I'm just saying, we're very centric in our world. Our map is New York City. I'm so New York City. I don't even count Buffalo or Rochester or Syracuse as being part of New York.
That's filthy uptown. Yeah.
I mean, that's upstate. That's upstate. Yeah. That's part of Canada too. Like I said, I'm purely a New York City guy. The 4 boroughs. People might lie to you and tell you there's 5 boroughs in New York City. There's only 4. Nobody, no real New Yorkers count Staten Island as part of New York City either. But so yeah, I'm super New York centric. But anyway, just really quick, we got a couple of minutes left in the broadcast tonight. Hodey, I want to talk because this kind of sort of loosely ties in, and this is that we started to see some things in a lot of the social media coming out of Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announcing Qatar Emery Air Force Base training facility in Idaho. Now, when this was first announced, there was a lot of pushback, especially from the president's base, because it's like, wait, what? It's like we're letting Qatar or Qatar build an Air Force base here? What's going on here? Why are we doing that? And this is on the heels of, though legal, optically shady dealings that the president was getting. They were going to gift him a 747, a luxury 747. They were going to essentially build his library for him when his term was up. All these weird sort of arrangements that really blurred the line between personal and diplomatic, right? But Hodey, did we jump the gun on this, do you think, on this Air Force base for Qatar in Idaho?
Well, we didn't jump the gun. McDrinky Drink himself, unfortunately, announced it. That
I'm going to keep saying that until it catches on, Hodey.
As well you should. In an alcoholic stupor, I can presume
yes.
He announced that Qatar was getting a base here, and I believe functionally he's correct. It is owned by the United States. And that is kind of the thing that people didn't like, when you have something introduces a Qatari Air Force base, it's like, so what, the country has like an Air Force base here? Right. So the best way to think of this in actuality, and I had to go, because when he announced that, he was holding the thing that he signed in a deal with Qatar, right? And so I was like, what is on that document? Like, let me read that thing real quick, like to see if what you said actually matches. Right. And like, now I think there's plenty to talk about here, but like, I do want to say the idea that it is Qatar like territory is not correct. Their country won't control the base, but
it's entirely U.S. owned.
It is entirely U.S. owned. However,
yes,
the day-to-day operations will still be governed by Qatar. It is actually the reason, the best way to think of it. In fact, in a later announcement, they're like, actually, this is the same type of deal the U.S. has with Qatar in their country and with many, many other countries overseas. You hear about this all the time from libertarians. We talk about our foreign Air Force bases. They are not technically are Air Force bases in the sense that they are owned by the U.S. government. They are made through deals with these other governments, and we are allowed to conduct the day-to-day activities, operations there, etc. Now, in effect, that is, it looked, I guess not de jure, but de facto, it does make it a U.S. military base. We send our people there, we determine the exercises, we choose the personnel, and that's what's there. So Qatar will have an Air Force base here. Like I said, technically they don't own it. It's like, just in.
But to kind of play off of the president's emphasis on economic, supposedly things, deal making. I won't even say economic principles. Deal making. Qatar is contributing, or they've committed to 10 years of funding this base and providing the maintenance funds for it. They get to conduct exercises, F-15 fighter jets, because the airspace here is a lot more, I guess, conducive to training, than it is flying over the Middle East. I agree with you. I think, again, when you have someone who's both questionably sober and generally seems like he's on roid rage all the time, like Pete Hegseth, that when he makes these announcements, they really should let a spokesperson talk for him, like a manager in pro wrestling. You get the roided up dude in the background go grunting, leave it at that. When it comes to the talking, bring in like Bobby the Brain Heenan or something, right?
Yeah.
Hegseth needs himself a Bobby the Brain Heenan, to communicate clearly, very badly, right? Yeah. He needs him badly. Because when you like, much like yourself, when I first heard, I'm like, wait, what? What's going on here? Libertarian or otherwise, what the heck is going on here? But then when you kind of pull it back a little bit, it's much more conventional in the sense that we do the same thing in a lot of other sovereign nations, and to that extent, okay, it does defray some costs. Supposedly it's budget neutral. I haven't actually broken down the numbers, but let's take them at their word. It's budget neutral. I could understand why it would be budget neutral potentially. But I think it brings into question, why is the president so cozy with Qatar, with Qatar? Why is he, like, even if they're technically legal, like the optics of getting presidential gifts from Qatar, the using the phrasing like, oh, it's going to be a foreign base in Idaho. The transparency at times isn't really. Sometimes it's opaqueness, like you said. What's if we're budget neutral and not budget positive out of this? If we're not getting ROI on a baser level, why are we doing this? How does it serve our national interest to have them here? Like, you could argue having American Air Force operations hosted, say, in the Middle East somewhere, or say Turkey, is a benefit to Turkey, right? They, like you said, de facto get our protection there, right? Because we have our troops there. What are we getting out of having it here in the U.S.? And then, is there much of an economic boost to Idaho by hosting this? I mean, maybe, I guess, if you consider rent and all that, but I'm assuming most of that would be federal, not at the state and local level. So what's with this relationship that the president has with Qatar? I mean, look, I'm all for diplomacy and I'm all for having friendly relations with as many nations around the world as possible. I get it. But why the coziness with Qatar and saying no and open hostility towards Ukraine? Why the open hostility towards France from the Trump administration? Or Canada to some extent, and Mexico to some extent. Why are you adversarial with them, but you're cozying up to Qatar? Why is that concerning at all, or do we just accept that, okay, it's one country he's not going to have beef with?
Yeah, so Qatar is an interesting situation. I first kind of learned about their influence during the Dave Smith, Douglas Murray debate, and they both just brought up how this is a country with even more investment than Israel in the United States.
Okay,
and it's like, boy, that's
saying a lot. Yeah,
that's saying a lot. That's a lot of influence. And sure enough, and they've been investing in things enough to the point where they get to kind of have a say in policy. And some of the concerning areas, it includes technology, which you expect, but that includes things like education. They care about how Qatar is viewed in our textbooks, right? They want to make sure that there's a positive thought process with their country. This is hardly surprising, because every country should want to be viewed negatively or positively by the United States. Yeah, if we view you negatively, we tend to blow you up. So and obviously they have a lot of, they're dependent. They're high. I believe they're actually classified as highly dependent on hydrocarbon gas revenue. And so this is that is their big income, basically their banana republic, right? When we talk about a banana republic, the technical term means you basically have one source of revenue.
Your economy is based on bananas. That's
based on bananas.
Yeah,
in this case, they are a hydrocarbon gas republic. They are aware of this. And so to get out of that, to put yourself in the kind of the Qatari shoes, what they're trying to do is say, well, we that's not safe. Obviously, if all you have is gas, that makes you a target, right? And so paying the United States is very helpful to making sure that the United States doesn't find a reason to invade and kill you. And, when they know you have gas. So part of this is kind of they're getting it ahead of a situation, right? That they know that they could easily be seen as enemies of the United States, and the United States invades or, occupies or whatever we do with a bunch of other countries, where we just kind of leave some soldiers there that tap your resources.
Right.
So by paying us, we kind of say, oh, well, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. We don't need to attack a country. They do have gas, and that would be nice to have, but they're already paying us so much money. Maybe we don't need to go in and annihilate them all, right? So part of this is just smart thinking on their ends. But they've obviously taken it like to the next level. They want to promote their own national interests within the United States. And part of this by doing things like having a security base halfway around the world. The idea that it's somehow convenient there, no. You want the United States' approval, and of course you do. Like, be honest about what it is, right? Like, you want to be on our good side and want to have ties with each other. So that way, hey, if you're going to war with America, you're going to war with us too. And hey, if somebody invades us, hey, we're allies. We got Air Force bases in your country. Won't you help us out too? So this is predominantly, I think, I want to put my conspiracy hat all the way on as a libertarian. I have to only keep it loosely on because to me, these come off as survival mechanisms.
It's basically they bought an insurance policy.
Yes. Yep.
That's what
and the United States is a great insurance policy to have, right? The country most likely to blow you up being on your side is huge, right? Like that is important.
Blow anybody up. I think that's the key, right? It's not just blowing up Qatar. It's blowing up anybody who messes with Qatar, right? Like, look, the president already said, hey, I dropped bombs on Iran, so my buddy Israel would be happy with me. And they can keep those political contributions flowing, right? Like, especially this president has shown a willingness to do that. Basically, it's like, hey, baby, U.S. military is out for rent. We're not even going to be pretending to be on the side of angels anymore. So if you're on our good side, you're dropping some coins, however dispersed they may appear, into our coffers and into President Trump's business interests, absolutely. We'll be happy to send like an airborne division over there or to send a bomber squadron or some drones. We'll be happy to do that. So, yeah, I think that so on the one hand, yeah, it's not a Qatari base. We get it. But on the other hand, it is a little cheesy. It is a little distasteful that, you're and again, like if Hamas came to you and said, hey, if we funded a training base somewhere in Oklahoma, would you bomb Israel for us every so often just to balance the scales? Like, is that a deal someone like Hamas can get? Is that a deal Syria can get from us? Or North Korea? I don't know.
Right. And to tie the two subjects together that we're talking about, Qatar also sponsors Hamas, right? Like so I don't want to make it just sound like they're just all in it for they're just trying to live is all they're trying to do. Right. Like they've made a bed with some people that you shouldn't be making beds with and supports them as well. So America is playing both sides, but like you said, Big John, as long as you're supporting Trump's business interests, and I think the big important thing to them is making deals with Trump that last beyond Trump, right? That these are deals that will last for a while. And so if you can get that to happen, then you're in really good shape, right? To say even if somebody hostile to President Trump takes over afterwards, hey, we've got a 10-year arrangement. We're allowed to be here. Are you trying to go renege on your deal? Are you trying to provoke the Middle East again? That's not something you want to do. And so then they get these deals that last a long time.
Yeah. It's like getting a long-term lease on your store, right? Because if you lock in that rate for 40 years, then if it's in a metropolitan area, obviously it builds up around you, but you got your 40-year lease, right? So you've got an advantage going forward. So sometimes those long-term contracts do pay off. All right. I think this is a good point to end tonight's show, Hodey. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us once again this week on Free for All. Thanks to the folks in the chat. Really appreciate you tuning in on Facebook, YouTube, or X. Really appreciate it. Again, we're considering if people have any ideas about Rumble, should we get this going on Rumble as well? Toss us a note. Let us know. Won't take much to convince me that we should be on Rumble. So send me a note. Let me know what you think. Do people actually go to Rumble? I don't know. It seems to be one of those questions that nobody really answers, Hodey. But please take the time, follow us on whatever platform you're watching this. If you're on X, follow us at Distant Warrior. If you're on YouTube, go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Distant Warrior. Subscribe there for us, really help us out. If you're on Facebook, go to our Facebook page, Distant Warrior, and please follow us there. Basically, I think we even, Hodey, got something going on Blue Sky. If you're one of them liberals on Blue Sky that occasionally tunes in to listen to at least one classical liberal, which would be me, not an anarchist like Hodey. If you could tolerate us on Blue Sky, follow us there too. Distant Warrior. We'll try to be everywhere. Also, in the coming weeks, we'll be announcing some other stuff in terms of content coming to the channel. So look forward to that. Our thanks to everybody in the chat. Terry just has a note. She says, Rumble has been having a lot of trouble. Let's check out their latest updates, and she'll let us know. We love Terry almost as much as Free loves Terry. We love Terry as well. So thanks, Terry, for the update there. Hodey, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I'm jealous of Terry. I think everybody needs a Terry to help them out, and the fact that that free got her is upsetting. It's very difficult, like honestly, to contend with. She's such a supportive person. She's both public and she'll talk to you behind the scenes as well. Great discussion. She's actually a good follow just in herself as far as like news updates on the daily.
Absolutely.
But, you know, obviously the game show is what we like to talk about and have fun with. But yeah, she's got a lot of good stuff. What's funny is, while being a behind the scenes helper, she's got really strong opinions, and I don't know how she deals with me popping off in the on some of the stuff that I do.
She does.
She thinks, but it's really cool. You know, you want somebody who has those strong opinions, who is also willing to be supportive and be a helper. So Terry is really cool, and that's all I gotta say.
All right. And on that note, our praise of Terry, let's end the show and say peace, everyone. Catch us next week. The Hodester over there, Big John over here. Catch you next time.